Now back to Ian Furness on Seattle Sports Radio 950, KJR.
All right, welcome back in Sports Radio 950 KJR. Ian Furness with you. The big news, obviously, all the reports that Jarred Kelenic is going to get called up, the phenom for Seattle. He's going to make his debut, we think, on Thursday with the Mariners. It's been I would say a long time coming, but in baseball terms, it's anything but a long time. and I wanted to get some insight from this because all of us that are fans and media, everyone's been throwing their 2 cents in and, should he do this and when should he get called up? And I think it's not just Jarred Kelenic, it's Julio Rodriguez, it's just baseball players as a whole. When are they ready? And I thought, they've got to find somebody that knows, that knows the system, that's been up through it. And I found that person because through a mutual friend, actually a coworker as well. And although I should say, having talked baseball with her a few times in the Q13 newsroom, I maybe should have had her on as opposed to her husband. But Daniel Robertson is a former major leaguer, briefly played with the Mariners, but also with 3 other teams, Texas, Cleveland, Anaheim, I believe. Am I getting them all right? Is that right?
Yeah,
how are you?
You got it. I'm doing great. How are you doing? Thanks for having me in.
I appreciate you jumping on today. I mean, and I mentioned it. You did the minor league tour from the Northwest League short season all the way up to the big leagues for a few years, and as well. And I do mean that in honesty. Your wife probably knows more about baseball than most of us in the media, having kind of conversations with her. So I hope she's doing well. Let's talk about, just in general terms, baseball's changed a little bit. And where are you at right now? And this is probably a good place to start because baseball really has changed. It's undergone this massive change over the last 24 months because I know you're down in Salem, but no longer do we have the Northwest short season ball, right?
Yeah, there were 48 teams left off there, and Salem Kaiser Volcanoes were one of them. And that new realignment, which it's hard to think and fathom that we would have shrunk the minor leagues because of all the people that have come through those cities that are now no longer going to have baseball. So that's a different question. We could get to that in a little bit, but yeah, so there's quite a few teams that got left off. Now there's only 6 teams in that league, in that high A division. So now there are 4 teams in one spot: the Portland Mavericks, the Salem Senators, the Campesino de Salem Kaiser, which is the team that I coach, and then the original Salem Kaiser Volcanoes. So it's an interesting setup now with all of the teams that got left off. The majority of them have started independent leagues. So there's still baseball being played. I think something that's easily forgotten through all of this is we went through a pandemic, and unless you played baseball in an alternate site or you were in the big leagues, there's thousands of ball players that had jobs that haven't gotten to play in the last 2 years. So for me, no matter what independent league you're in, it's all about just getting to play because some of these kids lost out on their senior years. Some of them weren't able to come back for whatever roster reasons they had. So we were able to give people a home. We were able to give people a place to play. And I think that's what's important being down here with the newer realignment.
It's interesting. So, and you're coaching and managing down there in Salem right now and having an opportunity. Before I get to Kelenic, because he's the outlier, how many guys, as you just mentioned, in baseball got left out that potentially could be playing in the big leagues that may never get that chance now?
That's a great question. That's a great question, Ian. And I'm so excited you said that because I saw a stat the other day that I believe it was Heyman that tweeted it. I could be wrong. He tweeted that there are 46 players right now on major league rosters that were drafted in the 20th round or later, 21st round or later. So in my mind, that's almost 2 full baseball teams that are filled. And so you take that away, and I'm not saying it can change dramatically, but what I will say is from a guy that's been around baseball as long as I have, and, I came up playing against Mike Trout. I played with Beltre, Robinson Cano, Mike Trout, Pujols. I played with some David Freese, some players that have made their mark on this game. And what I will say is it's not hard to find those guys. It's not. The hardest part to win baseball games is to find the guys that you build around them with. And I would love to see the deep dive into the statistics in how many teams that have won World Series in the past 20, 30 years where you have your Eric Hosmers drafted in the first round, but what about the Gerard Dysons that filled out that Royals roster? What about the guys that filled out the middle and back end of the Royals roster that created that? When they signed Salvador Perez, there's so many instances where guys, you find the pure baseball player that know how to play the games that help you win 30, 40, 50 games throughout the year that the all-stars just can't do. We're seeing it in today's game. The separation is too far. You're seeing the bona fide superstar and you're seeing the young kid who's frankly just not ready. And it's not his fault. It's not anyone's fault. It's just the thirst for talent. I think we're all responsible for it. I think the thirst for talent and the thirst for wanting to see young action and see young guys play well. But, the Mike Trouts and the distant Bryce Harpers, those guys that are so good at their age, they're just a dime a dozen. They're generational players. And I think sometimes organizations get caught in the limelight where they look across the board and they see Mike Trout and they think, oh my gosh, that's the guy that we need to get so we can change the landscape of our organization and we can put it on the map. So they start scouting, they start recruiting for the 5-tool, the explosive player, the guy that makes your eyes light up, whether you're a player or even just a fan or in a media member that's a fan of baseball. And that becomes the bar and everyone chases the bar. And sometimes it's very easy to get lost in it. And I think you being a super sports fan, you can see it a little bit in football too, but it's not the same. They get the guy that they know they need in the first or second round. And then the third round is widely known as the guy that you actually find your superstar player. And it's known throughout the league. And so I think it's fun to understand that in the back of the draft is when you're going to find your players. But now you trim the draft by 20 rounds. And now where are you going to find the true baseball player? And you're going to have to find him in independent ball. But now with scouting departments shrinking, how are you going to find those guys that can run the bases great, that have good arms, that play good defense, that put the ball in play? Kind of the David Fletchers, you see him throughout the league where there's guys that just put the ball in play. The Nick Madrigals, I know he was a 4th rounder, but the guys that just put the ball in play, they put pressure on the defense. They know how to play the game of baseball. They're playing chess while some people are playing checkers or trying to figure out what game we're playing. There's a real dynamic change in the sport. And so it's actually been fun to watch because I think when I was a player, it's frustrating because at the end of my career, I fell victim to being the older guy in the young room. And at 33, I couldn't find a job after having one of the best seasons of my career, hitting 340 with 30 extra base hits and stealing 25 bags in 70 games, thinking, oh, this is going to get me signed, and learning how to hit for power because power comes with age. So I felt like I was just blossoming as the best version of myself, and mentally I was better than I'd ever been. And I still couldn't find a job because I was 30, whether it was 33 or whatever the case may be.
That's great. Daniel Robertson joining us here as we're talking baseball. All right, that's a good transition into Jarred Kelenic, a guy that we've been wondering when he's going to come up. It looks like it's coming. It's happening. You mentioned there are the Trouts and the Harpers, and there's the guys that are a generational type talent. There's a thought that he is that guy, and the thought is that, we heard Jerry DiPoto say he needs all these at-bats and he's never been into AAA, and he's going from here to here so quick. And then all of a sudden, snap of the fingers, maybe when they all of a sudden have that extra year of him under club control, he's up. Let me ask you this, because I always kind of, and maybe I'm totally wrong in this. My thought and theory would be there are exceptions to every rule. You and so many others started in short season A and made that progression step by step. This is a guy that seems like he could bypass it. Is he? I mean, I don't know. It's a hard question to ask, but are there guys like that? Is it realistic to think that he can make the jump after just, less than a week in AAA?
Well, I think in a way, to answer your question, honestly, Ian, if anyone on this earth had that answer, we would be sitting somewhere in the Caymans with a $25 million house in an airport landing strip, and everyone's landing in to try to get our opinion, right? So I think at the end of the day, I think sometimes we forget in this really fun machine that we have, this baseball machine that's been pumping phenomenal players out since the 70s and 80s. I mean, all the way back to Ty Cobb. It's been pumping out players that we get to watch and enjoy the game that we love because it's America's favorite pastime for a reason. But we forget that nobody has the answer. So we're all just, even the people put in the most highest power, Jerry DiPoto, for example, he's doing the best that he can with all the information that he can, trying to find the guys that are going to help the Mariners win, because that's ultimately the goal. The Mariners haven't been to the playoffs, and I don't want to put a finger on it because, truth be told, Ian, growing up in Southern California, I was a diehard Mariner fan. So everyone thought that when I was with the Anaheim Angels, that was the elite moment in my life, and this was the amazing feeling. Well, it was actually not true. The greatest moment of my life was putting the number 99 on my back that had sentimental value and running out at Safeco Field knowing all the Mariner history and being a part of the 95 playoff run and then crying when we lost to the Indians in the ALCS. So we forget that they're doing the best that they can. And, DiPoto found Trout. So I think it's a fun comparison, but I think everyone's different. Everyone is different in how they handle it. I think the one thing when you talk about Kelenic, looking just at some of his numbers and the way he plays, I think it's very easy to skip over the fact that 1 week in AAA is nice, but also they use big league balls in AAA. So when you're talking about AAA parks that play nothing like major league parks, they're using the same balls. So the ball's going to go way farther. There's guys that are out of the game now that wish that we could have AAA, big league balls in AAA again. I know I do. So I think to say that he needs to make a stop every step of the way, like some of us, is an understatement, and it could be an overstatement in the same breath, because guys like me who have to come all the way up, we don't have to come all the way up because we're not polished enough or we're not ready. I was an MVP my first year and then went my second year and I was a fourth outfielder, because the running joke amongst the baseball players down there is the minor leagues is really just for the rounds 1 through 5, and then all of us are just there so they could keep getting better. But I think when you take a closer look at his numbers, he had 309 and then he hit 291, and then when he got to AA, he hit 250. And so I think the power numbers are there, but I think the game has changed so much and there's so much velocity, but there's also so much detail put into the art of hitting. There's too many specifics that we're trying to mold. If fans like to see home runs, then let's mold our hitters into hitting home runs. If the fans don't seem to care about strikeouts, then why care about them? So it's a hard pill to swallow when we're trying to find prospects and move them through the system that we think our fans are ultimately going to like, because at the end of the day, that's really all it's about. It's about fan experience and bringing a team in that the fans can get behind, that the fans feel like the players take after the core of what the city believes in, right? And so I feel like that can get hard at times when you take a look across the water or you take a look across the AL West and you see teams built differently, and some are winning and some are losing, and you feel like maybe there's a little, are we doing things the right way or the wrong way? And just like everything is confidence. So I feel like to be able to transition into what I feel like is the perfect road to get to the major leagues, it's really all about confidence. And I feel like maybe when I was coming up, the guys that made all-star teams, the guys that made postseason all-star teams in their minor leagues were the ones that moved up, and the guys that didn't really perform kind of stayed in the same level. But I think those days are kind of gone. And I think sometimes when those kids that just kind of rode their way to the show, not necessarily bang their way to the show, once they get there and they struggle, it's difficult for them because they don't know what real struggle's like, because they've never experienced real success and real stardom. And I feel like the guys that you see, the Howie Kendricks of the world, who had a career 370 batting average when they were in the minor leagues, when he got to the big leagues, he stayed, and he stayed for a long time. And so I think there's just a confidence piece that I think that is the most important when it comes to being developmental. It's not about the talent and the physical piece. It's about how are you going to handle the drunk guy out in right center field who's wearing you out. The guy that Kyle Lewis has to listen to when, maybe he has 3 punch outs in a game and he's got to listen to that entire beer garden wearing him out about what's going on. And there's certain guys that understand how to get through it and push through it. And then there's some guys that can't. And I think ultimately that's really where the growth comes from, is when you take the time to see how a guy handles failure. And I think if a guy's in the guys in the minor leagues too short, failure hasn't had time to catch him. And I think you need a preview of what that guy's going to be like as a teammate, as a leader, maybe he's just a role player, but you need to see that, and you need to see that makeup before you bring him into a situation where it's eat or be eaten, because the baseball at the major league level is the best of the best. And so there's some guys that thrive and there's some guys that don't.
I'll wrap it up with this. Daniel Robertson joining us, former big leaguer, now coaching down at independent ball in Salem. It sounds like you're skeptical of him coming up too soon.
Well, that's the thing, is I don't know, because I'm not as close to the situation as, Ian, as some of you guys are. You guys have been diving into this religiously. And so I'm not going to, just because I had a chance to be on a baseball field at the major league level doesn't mean my opinion weighs more than anybody else's. I think the more you see, the more you learn, and the more you learn, the more you understand. And so I would just have to see more of him. And I think that's it. I think if someone's job is to bring him up, ultimately there's a long working process that goes into bringing a GM in and the detail that they take to get players. It's not just a good old boys club where you bring people in and they get the job because you're someone's friend. They want to win, and they have some pride in their own work, and they don't want to be wrong, and they don't want to have the fan base suffer. So for me, I just want to see him play. I want to see him play. I want to see what he does with runners in scoring position. I want to see what he does when the Mariners start losing. I want to see how he acts when the Mariners start winning, because the season's an ebb and a flow, man. You've seen it, Ian. 162 games is a long time.
Yep.
That 60-game season, I feel like it was beautiful for everyone to see, because anything can happen in 60 games. Literally anything, from MVPs to Cy Young winners to Rookie of the Years to World Series champs. I think we all knew the Dodgers were a really good team, but I don't think anyone expected the Rays to get there. But they got hot at the right time. But 162 games, man, it's not for the boys. It's a man's game, and you better be ready. And I think time will tell. If he comes up and he does well, then good on him. Then he didn't need that road. He didn't need the long road that some people take. At the end of the day, we forget Trout was in the big leagues at 19. Beltre was in the big leagues at 19. Miguel Cabrera was hitting homers off Roger Clemens in a World Series at 20. There's so many players that have come in. Elvis Andrews at 19. There's so many players that have graced this game at such a young age and have been great, but they just need to be given that chance. And I feel like if they feel like he's ready, who are we to think otherwise? But I hope the best for the kid, because I know we could say what we want, the back and forth with his agent and the things that the owner said, they're crazy and they're outlandish, but the big leagues is still the dream, and it's the goal, whether you're a first rounder or a 50th rounder. It's the most amazing feeling when you get the call, when someone tells you that dream you had as a little kid is coming true. So I hope he's ready. I'm not skeptical, because if he's ready, his play is going to show. Because I think sometimes, especially as media, I think we need to get back to letting the players play their proof and let them prove themselves, because the past you can't bring with you. I wish I could bring all the minor league success I could into the major leagues, but it just doesn't work that way. And that's what I would wish. I just wish people would give him a chance to prove that he's worth, as opposed to that 0-for-4 night that he's going to have, that night where he has 3 strikeouts. And then the night that he has 3 home runs, just the night that he hits multiple home runs in a game, don't make him out to be the savior of Seattle. And when he has that bad game, don't make it out to be this conquest that someone was right and someone was wrong, that he was too early.
I love it, man. Listen, great having your insight. I'd love to pick your brain again during the course of the summer. There's about 18 things you hit on there that I know my producer, Kevin, who's a big baseball guy, is going to want to hit on as well down the road. But hopefully we can have a conversation again, man. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you for having me on, Ian. And I love talking baseball. It's what I love to do, man. So anytime you want me on, I'll make time available for you in this great show.